why am I spending 200,000, 300,000 on lighting? I know that that can't be that expensive. If you don't explain that your sofa that you've spent $50,000 on and that piece of art that you're spending $100,000 on the wall, if you don't let me put the right lighting in place to light this up with the right tone, the right hue, the right texture, that is going to look terrible on the wall. What's the point in spending all that money on the furnishings, on the artwork, when the lighting isn't in the right place?
Well, we have Michael Short on with us today. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. It's good to have you. So Michael is the Senior Director of Marketing Operations and also the residential side there at Crestron. So I know how big Crestron is and how many projects you do with us alone. And I'm not sure how you can perform and run that many tasks there at Crestron. So congrats to you, Michael.
Appreciate it. There's a big team here. We have lots of people. So yeah, I have a nice title, but there's a lot of people supporting. We're very fortunate at Crestron. We have a great marketing team, lots of people working across the business, even outside of residential. So if you remove my portion, the other part of Crestron is this huge commercial function and business that we have. So yeah, big team, really great team. But it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, same here. And especially that Michael's made time, broadcasting from London. So we get you from one of my favorite places in the world to visit. So very
Okay.
fortunate.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, London's one of my favorite trips. I've been there a few times, and it's one of my favorite cities. But to sidetrack this a little bit is interesting. We were talking offline with Michael about just the podcast as you were just about to hit record here, and I know you're starting your own, and so you've been in front of the camera. You do a lot of speaking and training, and you have an incredible team. I know a lot of your team members, that serve us here locally and nationally here in the Western U.S. And so. How's that been as you've been like prepping for the podcast and learning the editing and everything that goes into it?
Yeah, I mean it's funny. Podcasts, as you will know, have been around for years and years, and I absolutely love that rich media format. Personally, I listen to podcasts, I watch them online, and Crestron's never had a podcast. We've got YouTube channels, we do interviews, we do videos at events, and we launch products and do all these different sort of marketing levers that we pull, but we've never taken that step to do an official podcast. And we've been wary about it a little bit because it's a lot of work, but also you have to have fantastic topics, great guests who can add and elevate the platform. And we've just kind of never really pulled that lever and doubled down on it. So yes, we're about to kick off the process. We've got a team helping, and we're going to be doing a podcast that's going to be available on all the different streaming platforms as well as on YouTube as well. So we'll have a video portion of it wrapped into it as well. And we're excited to get it going. But you've been doing yours for quite some time. We're on episode 247. That's a lot of podcasts. And I love what you said earlier. When you started this, you did all the editing yourself. So you know the pain of getting going, but also once you can get some help in building it, it's a great addition. So how have you found podcasting 247 episodes in?
I love that, Michael. It's funny when I started it, you never know, how long is it going to continue? Can I keep this up? Are people going to listen? Is there going to be support? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, not just the production. And so you can imagine starting out, I mean, there was definitely no operating costs. So I was, the first 12 months, I just remember it'd be like, I go live every Sunday. But back then, the first year, I think it would go live late, like Sunday around midnight or Monday morning, because I would always record, and then Sunday night would be the time that I could sit down and edit and get it uploaded and through SoundCloud and the way I was doing at the time. Um, and the reality of the podcast is, I'll get back to the operation made the editing side, but I've found a tremendous amount of business growth personally from hosting guests such as yourself, Michael. I mean, you and I have been connected. I'm very familiar with you and your team and your leadership, and so I feel very privileged that I get guests such as yourself that come on that are just industry leading experts. And fortunately for my platform, is a lot of the guests I've had, a lot of them aren't even related to construction. They're successful entrepreneurs or business people or professional athletes, and so you get this hour where it's just a very intimate one-on-one. And the conversation, how it transpires, and I try to follow the guests on, the direction they take it for the most part. And I just find that there's more value for me. And, I do love when people that listen reach out like, hey, I got so much out of this episode, or repost it. I mean, that's fantastic. But maybe it's a selfish endeavor, but, to have someone such as yourself, Michael, I find it very valuable. So,
No, I appreciate you having me on. And I think that, both professionally and personally, these platforms are, one, they're really good fun. For me, it's great to come on. And when I get the opportunity to do it both ways, either have an interview or conversation or lead that conversation on other platforms, it's really good fun. But I think both personally and professionally, we can get so much from having these interactions. And obviously, when people listen in and, even if they just take a couple of snippets of things that we talk about, or even just pass the time, it's really great to know that we've been involved in that stuff. So from your standpoint, you mentioned it, but would this be an endeavor that if there were other people listening who have businesses like yours or run their own, you'd advise, look, it takes a while to get off the ground, but it's a worthwhile endeavor, because you have to get through those first episodes, right? And it takes a while to build a following and to get into the rhythm. But you definitely say it's something, if you want to, you should definitely try and follow through with.
Yeah, I think it's like anything in life. And I'll say one thing that I'm very fortunate, just getting to your point there, Michael, is that, I connected with Motif Media. And a lot of people know Motif, they published the Modern Craftsman, and which is another big construction related podcast. And so Doug's been phenomenal as we coordinate, him producing it. And there's just a lot of synergy there. So a lot of credit to him and what he's done. And before that, I'd worked with a local firm, Greg Villafana, who's here, and he does the Pool Chasers podcast. So, fortunately, after my first year, I mean, we're coming up on 5 years, the last 4 years, I've worked with two amazing teams to
Great.
really publish and, for lack of a better word, put us on the map, right? And make this much more professional. But to your point, it's interesting because the podcast side, most of my listeners, I believe, are entrepreneurs. I mean, they're not all just in the field of what we do. Case in point, I was out with my team and we were at this Mexican restaurant, and a lady walks up and she's like, hey, I listen to your podcast. And she's a nurse. Like, she's a nurse in one of the hospitals here. And she's like, I just find it interesting, the different topics of entrepreneurship. Because, we bring on a lot of people that talk about leadership and, company culture and listening to the client. And so there's just topics that I think resonate with a lot of industries. And to your point that you made earlier, I mean, Crestron's so active in YouTube and events. I mean, Crestron's at so many events that we're at as well. And I know you have your own magazine. I mean, we were fortunate to be published in, your Crestron magazine that I actually have in my office at my desk, because we did that net zero house of the year that Crestron was a huge partner getting into sustainability. And the podcast is it's another layer, right? We're all looking as a business owner to add layers to the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny you mentioned the magazine. So the magazine is called it's called Smarter Spaces, and for us, that publication allows us to tell stories, to highlight our partners like yourself, to talk about our technology, and it's called Smarter Spaces. And we actually do two versions of that: one for the residential sector, and then a separate version for commercial. Because what we do is we create smarter spaces. So from a marketing standpoint, that publication is a way for us to repurpose all of the content that we put out there digitally. The marketing landscape's changed drastically over the past 5, 10, 15 years. And as you'll know, for us to keep up with that, we have to change with the times. And one thing that we found fell away maybe 10 years ago was print publications. There are trade magazines. Luckily and fortunately in your industry and across real estate, print is still a huge, huge part of the game. But in our industry, from a technology standpoint, print kind of fell off the radar a little bit. So we decided that actually to merge our worlds in residential, that producing a print publication was going to be a real great way. And we found success in that. People like yourself have them on their in their showrooms, on their coffee tables, and there's something we can use to stand behind. And it's a great, beautiful publication. The podcast is actually followed up the success of the publication, and it's going to be called the Smarter Spaces Podcast. So it's going to be based off the same brand and name as the publication, but is now going to be in this in a podcast format. And for us, it's just about finding the right levers to pull at the right time, and being able to find new ways to tell the stories that we're telling in other avenues, because content is always king, but there's only so much you can say to become just too much noise. So for us, it's going to be about picking the right stories that are going to flow not only through our digital channels online, direct to dealers or consumers, the stories that we're going to tell in the publication that are going to be consumed in a different way, and then to repurpose those stories and tell them in an interactive way via a podcast. So we're really excited to do it. What would you give me your top 3 tips on this podcast journey? Like I say, it's our first one with doing it. There's many of us who have been on them or done different forms of rich media. What would be your top 3 bits of advice you could give us as we kick this program off?
Oh, that's a great question, Michael. Shooting fast here from the hip, if you would. I found with the podcast is that I I think it's really important that you'll notice that I'm always have a notepad next to me because as these conversations evolve, there's little nuggets you'll say, there's maybe quotes you'll give, there could be lessons learned. I mean, there's just points of emphasis that as the guest finishes their statement, if you will, and you're kind of ping ponging back and forth, I do try to bring that up again at some point in the session because I think there's points that really make an impact. So I think the note taking is very valuable
Okay.
because it helps follow the conversation. And, there's value to that. I found that, I don't do a ton of prep as far as, there's not a whole lot before you get on, with the exception of this, that I try to do quite a bit of research of the guest. And I'll give one example in the past is, I had Jeremy Andrus, who's the CEO of Traeger Grills, right? Traeger is a smoker. It's a smoking
Yeah,
grill here in the US.
I've seen them.
I know they're all over. Yeah, you've seen them. And, and he, I believe MBA from Harvard, and he went to Skull Candy, which is like headphone brand that they kind of built up, and he had done some development. And what was interesting when I was preparing to have him on the show a few years ago, I was just doing some research on Jeremy, and I found a story about how when he was taking over, when he purchased and acquired Traeger and he was taking it over, that he showed up to work and there was arson. Like the employees were burning down the building, right? Because they were frustrated with, him trying to figure out freight and shipping and the business. There's so many different arms, kind of like you, Michael. You're in your position, you have so many different arms from the marketing to the operations. And, you mentioned residential, marine, and all these different things we'll come back to in the commercial side. There's just a lot of people. There's a lot of personalities. And so, had I not done that, there's no way in the conversation I would have been able to get to that point and ask him about it and have him openly share about, you know, looking in the mirror as the company's burning down, thinking like, what did I do? Right. And how that's transpired, not just Jeremy 2.0, but Traeger 2.0 and how the company's evolved and how that really was call it a turning point or, that he, totally changed the business. And so, I just find that there's interesting nuggets you'll find doing research on people that make for great conversation and education.
Okay, so notebook, research. Go on, give me a third.
I think the third one would really try to bring maybe it's let me tee it up like this. I think it's really important to understand the content of your podcast and bring guests on that align with that. And
Okay,
the reason I say that is because when I came in, there weren't a ton of construction podcasts, but there were quite a few. And so I never wanted, and good friends of mine who are like Nick and Tyler that run Modern Craftsman, they do a phenomenal job and they're very industry related. I wasn't trying to compete with them. And that's really not my personality either. I'm obsessed with business. And so a lot of people listen to, I'm always like, hey, you're a business owner that focuses in construction. So for me, I wanted a podcast. I didn't really want to come on and bring on a guest and say, hey, Michael, tell me your story, right? Tell me your
sure.
background. How did you get here? I feel that there's relevance to who you are and the background that led you to where you are today. But I don't know if that always turns into um, great audio for the listener. I
Yeah.
think so for me, I dive right in like we did today, right into a question, a topic, and then we get going. And so really what I mean by that is I understand that for me, my podcast is entrepreneurship and business at the core. And then I want every episode that whoever's listening, they're going to get 4 or 5, 6 nuggets, maybe more, but 4 or 5, 6 take home things that they can do and change. And so that's my third piece of advice is really understand, you know, as you're going into the Crestron podcast that, hey, this is what here's the drivers that we really want the guests to get out of these episodes, and make sure our guests align, the topics align, and the conversation aligns.
I love that. And I think the funny thing is, the reason we're doing the podcast is actually to get that message and that thread back out to the industry. So not only is it to what is it we're trying to tell to the listeners, but we're also trying to work it back through us to reaffirm Crestron's position in the market and give us the ability to make some real stakes in the ground with regards to what do we stand for. We want to let people understand that, you know, we're bringing guests on not randomly because they're really good people, but because they relate to us, our core messaging, who we stand for and what we do. And we're going to help the listeners feed into who we are through the guests that we have. And it's going to sort of play into that as we push the podcast out there. So love those bits of advice. Definitely going to take all three of them on as well. It's it's going to be a fun lever to pull amongst all the many other marketing levers we have out there. And I'm excited to be involved in it and get it off the ground for sure.
Now, with the Smarter Spaces, not just the magazine, you know, maybe talk about the magazine's goals and kind of points of emphasis, and especially the podcast. You know, Crestron is, you know, for those that aren't familiar, you can give us a background of how in depth, you know, your software is and how it changes lifestyles for my clients and me. I mean, we're using Crestron to be open, and 99% of every project I build is Crestron. So, you know, how does that technology integrate to the messaging now into the podcast and the magazine?
Yeah, and that's kind of the core elements of the magazine and the podcast in reality, is trying to take what is a very complex suite of offerings that Crestron have and condense it down into something that our customers can understand and enjoy. You know, Crestron, we've been around for 51 years now, I think it is, 50 plus years. We're a company that has a lot of legacy, a lot of history, and we're built on innovation. We're a technology company at our heart, whether it's hardware or software. And what we do does exactly what you've just said. We change the way people live within buildings, whether it's offices, bars, restaurants, homes, super yachts, even in planes, you know, private planes. We do this huge mixture of incredible things, but everything we do is it enhances those environments. The technology behind the scenes is super complex. You know, the products we make, the software we build is really, really complex. So the aim of things like the publication and the podcast is to remove the dark and mysterious arts of the technology that actually most people don't really care about. That. What they care about is, what does it do for me? How does your technology enhance the way that me, my family, my friends can live within the home? And the reason for the podcast and some of these other elements are to be able to tell those stories in a way that can resonate and provide emotion to people, because that's really what we do. And it's finding the right platforms to tell those stories, to elevate our brand, to help people understand, and ultimately to build that brand advocacy out there in the market so that people know who we are, people request us when they're doing solutions or jobs, and we can continue to elevate these spaces. So I think that's the premise of the platforms and the premise of why we're producing these things. It's to help us find ways to tell stories. And as we do that, we start to learn more about how other people would want to hear about what we can do. We do so much. We have thousands of products, thousands of SKUs that our professionals can go and purchase. But when you distill it down, it's about telling the right stories and getting to the heart of it. So that's the aim for both of these. And that's why you were in the publication, because you did the net zero home, an absolutely relevant topic with regards to climate. But also when you look at what you did in that publication, you tell that story in a spectacular way. And it's not just about energy savings or climate. It's also about the experience and living within that house, how you enhance that space to do more than just become net zero, to produce an incredible home. And it's a great way to tell the story. So yeah, that's kind of the aims. We've got to tell these stories in ways that people understand and resonate with, and can really enjoy, essentially.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up, Michael, because the reality is, for us as a builder, we have to partner with amazing manufacturers and technicians and integrators and people that are changing the industry, especially if I'm trying to take my brand to the next level. And so Crestron's been a huge partner. I think I've worked with Crestron for 20 years now. This is a long relationship I've had with your team. And even though it's only been the last couple of months that you and I have been connected personally, um, but going back to the sustainability and the value side and the education, I know when you and I first engaged, something that's fascinating is a lot of us, and this is why your platform's so important, because a lot of us operate in our bubble, right? We're comfortable in our network, we're comfortable in our business strategies, and there's a lot more sometimes to the whole operation that we may not be realizing because we're so consumed with the day to day. And the reason
Yeah.
I bring that up is I know how functional Crestron is for my custom clients for the homes that I'm building. But you mentioned marine, which is fascinating because I'm not, I don't have any connections here with the yachts, but yet you're working. Talk us through some of the capability and what Crestron's doing just in the marine industry, which I think, if anything else, just is fascinating how limitless, the potential is out
Yeah, I mean, the marine side is, I always call the marine division of Crestron our sort of like Formula One. It's where
there. It's a
you
good,
take
it's a good analogy.
but the thing is, when I say this, last time I spoke to you, I was like, well, you actually do some of the biggest projects in the world as well. So, they're very, very similar. But for the marine side, we're talking about super yachts, essentially. And it's a space where you've got the most demanding of clients on the planet. So the owners of these vessels are the top percentage people in the world, because we're talking about the biggest boats on the planet. And Crestron has always been on these super yachts. When you get to something that's over about 50 meters in length, the only control platform that can really manage the requirements on board is Crestron. And it's not just about the ability to do the control aspects, manage audio and video distribution, manage control and designing interfaces, but it's the other elements that Crestron layers in. When you think about Crestron, we are the highest levels of security, and that's absolutely key on board these super yachts when you look at the owners who are on board. And then it's about reliability. When you're out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean doing a crossing, or when you're in the middle of nowhere on board your super yacht, you need your system to work. You need that absolute reliability on board. And Crestron has built its reputation on being the most reliable of solutions when it comes to um, smart home and what we do. So they're really the key elements. And then you scale up from there about what we can do. And you know this because you do it day in, day out, but managing audio and video, so your entertainment on board, your lighting, your shading. And then on board these super yachts, many times you have 30, 40 crew also living on board whilst you've got guests. So all of those crew who live, they also have their living spaces on board. They have to communicate not only with each other, but with the guests. So the systems have to be integrated, whether it's calling for support, whether it's looking at services you can deliver on board. All of these systems have to be integrated, but controlled from a single platform. And Crestron is built to do that at the most demanding level. So for us, the marine division, where we're dealing with these super yachts, is crazy. We do some of the most spectacular jobs, but it's also super exciting, and it's one that is fascinating to talk about when you go down into the levels of what we can do and how we do it and the people we do it for. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But you do lots of this anyway for your clients, because you do some of the biggest homes out there as well. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of care and service and customer experience. I mean, all these different things play into it. Um, I think the marine industry is fascinating because, maybe walk us through that process of the coordination of integrating the Crestron system. I mean, how early on, because it's not like, I mean, you could be coming in and retrofitting a yacht, I would imagine, a super yacht, but I would imagine it's most beneficial having Crestron at, as that's being constructed. So how does that process work just from the early integration of Crestron with the potential client, with the construction of the yacht before, it takes its first sail out to sea?
Sure. So there are two elements to um, the fitting out of these super yachts. So there is refits, and usually these super yachts every 10 years will go through a major refit, and that includes technology, interior design. So the refit period is a rolling time period, and they always go through refits and go through these changes. These are floating homes. The technology is key. It has to work. It has to be serviced, and it has to be refitted. So that's one great thing for us is if we're on board already, the refit comes in, and we get the opportunity to go in and essentially refit the boat with the latest technology because they always need to keep on top of that. But when you go back to the beginning phase, it really is working with the shipyards. So you've got these major shipyards in the world, for example, like Lursen, and they're always building super yachts for specific clients who have come in and spec'd what they might want. So it's a little bit different to the home construction industry in that when you think about Crestron in the residential space, the dealer will cover most of the technology in the house, and they'll be well connected into maybe the construction team or the lighting design team, and they're all working hopefully in synergy. Not always the case, and we know that things can be done independently in the residential construction side as well. But there's a lot of integration there with regards to conversations. What happens on the marine side is things happen very independently, and actually the spec will go out to tender a lot of the times through middlemen, through brokers, through the yacht designer, potentially even through somebody working directly for the owner who is being the person who will fan out all of the solutions. So you'll find sometimes that certain elements of technology are being handled by very different parties, which means that Crestron integrators, we have marine dealers at Crestron who specifically deal with marine projects. They might only be brought on just to do AV, and it's just audio and video only. And they'll take that aspect. They'll then have to connect the dots between the other systems, and they haven't been involved in those systems at all because they've been put in separately. But it does happen very much at the early phase when the boatyard is starting construction, when the boat design is being designed by specialist interior and exterior designers. The idea is that, yeah, we want to be brought in at that early stage, and our specialist marine dealers will go in and then scope out the projects. But just like residential, never happens perfectly. You're never brought in early enough. You're either brought in too soon and things change. And you have to be adaptable. And that's where the top dealers who are dealing with these projects really succeed and win, is having that ability to be super adaptable, know how to deal with these extremely high net worth individual and clients, very demanding clients, but be able to, like I say, be flexible with how they work, because it's never perfect and the process is never followed exactly as it should be.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? It's never early enough. I think that's, in fairness, even with my clients, I mean, automation is such a key integral part of the house, and the coordination between everything that it entails, from a restaurant perspective, from security, it could be from, the pool out back, the amenities, right? From lighting. I mean, the list goes on about how much Crestron does from our operation standpoint. And for some reason in our industry, it's always like we have this allowance, at the bottom of the project for, low voltage structure wiring, automation, these key components. And we're not integrating our team early enough. We're so consumed with, the standard details to get to permit, and it can make it a little trying on you guys.
And I think that we had a conversation recently internally around lighting, and that whole issue around being brought in at the right time is so key in having not only conversations with the builder, the owner, the architect or designer, because you have those line items with lighting, and then you have all the line items of the design aspects of the home. And you'll have a client who is happy to spend $50,000 on a sofa or on something architecturally in the room, a designer focused piece of art that goes on the wall. And they'll spend tens of thousands on the artwork or the furnishings. But when they see a line item where the lighting comes in at X amount, the question is, well, why am I spending 200,000, 300,000 on lighting? That I know that that can't be that expensive. If you have that conversation too late and don't explain that your sofa that you've spent happy to spend $50,000 on is not going to be sufficiently lit in the right manner, with the right texture, with the right layers of lighting, that it will look dull and depressed in this space. And that piece of art that you're spending $100,000 on the wall, if you don't let me put the right lighting in place to light this up with the right tone, the right hue, the right texture, that is going to look terrible on the wall. What's the point in spending all that money on the furnishings, on the artwork, when the lighting isn't in the right place? Once you have those conversations early on, that lighting affects the space, and you could have a $300 piece of art on the wall, and if it's lit correctly, it will look like $100,000 piece of art. Those little things that tick over in the customer's minds, it changes the perception. But if you don't have that conversation early enough and they just see a line item, they don't understand the value. And that's where we're trying to help in the industry and in having conversations, that it's not just a line item around lighting or automation. These conversations need to be had as part of the design elements, because most of this influences the thousands they're going to spend on that interior. And it's vital to have those conversations at the right time to understand why they're spending this money on things they don't think they see, but they do.
Yeah, I think the correct term, I mean, you speak about value, and so many times there's so much value, and it's really how are we communicating and portraying that to the client. And the example you gave where we'll have clients spend so much, or they have some incredible artwork already. And, the value and understanding of the limitless capability from how we can really showcase that piece. I mean, there's an element behind that that just that value has to be brought to their attention so that they not only understand it, but respect it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But this is education, and this is storytelling, and it's on us, one as the manufacturer, and you and your world and our dealers' world. It's our jobs to tell these stories and to educate through the right mechanisms, because you don't know what you don't know. And our world is complex. We make black boxes and produce software. Um, it's difficult, and it's our job to tell those stories. And I think that in our in our job, and as a marketeer, in a manufacturer, we have to help you tell these stories, because it's difficult. And some of the companies we work with are small independents with two or three people, and they are dealing with $1 million projects. So we have to help and support them and find ways to tell these stories so they can have the conversation confidently with the clients around why these things cost what they do and the value add to their lives, really.
So walk me through what keeps you up at night, like some of the stress is in your role, Michael.
Engineering, you know, we launch a lot of products, and I'm responsible for product launches on the residential side. And I would say that over the course of a normal Crestron year, I probably deal with, let's say, 60 product or software launches that I would sort of categorize as high tiers in terms of going to market. And the biggest challenge that I face is working with our engineering team. We are like I said, a manufacturer. So we have a huge number of engineers working day in, day out on designing and producing and manufacturing and building and creating these products. And they're very different people to you and I and to sales. So what keeps me up at night is essentially, how do I take all of their technical conversations and all of the technical nuances of the black box and take that and go, this is what it does to a normal person. This is what it does and how it's going to affect a normal person's life. How do you take that information and distill it down and put it in to something that you can take to market and tell your client that they need? And I can give you a really fun example of that recently. So we have a platform in Crestron called NVX, Digital Media NVX. You'll know this. This is our platform that distributes video throughout the home. So you'll have all of your sources in a rack, and then your customers can pick and choose what they want to watch anywhere. And we also have underneath that platform an audio distribution platform called NAX. Now, it's built on the same premise as NVX, but it basically takes audio, all of your streaming services, and we all have Spotify, we all have Pandora, we all have all these different platforms, and we push them throughout the home. So you can throw amazing parties anywhere in the house, and you can listen to music everywhere, and it's the highest quality. But we recently launched this small black box called a BTIO. Now, this is a Bluetooth receiver that would just go in a wall and basically takes all of these streaming services and allows you as the consumer to essentially take your phone and connect to it and distribute audio everywhere. Now, when I first received the spec for this, it was this list of its capabilities through NAX, all these acronyms, all of these, crazy things you could do with this, because it has elements wrapped into this that are built, to go beyond what we might need in the home. And I sat down, I was like, how am I going to tell a story here that makes sense to our audience? We're talking about the ability to just Bluetooth in, and great, I can walk in the home as a guest and play music. And then I found a little line in this document with regards to what it could do from an output standpoint. And I was like, where this is going to be really useful? You lay in bed with your partner and you're watching a movie on TV and they fall asleep and you really want to finish the movie, but your partner's asleep. What this product also allows you to do is put your AirPods in, Bluetooth connect, and stream the audio from the film into your headphones. So now there's no audio in the room apart from in your headphones, and you can finish the evening, finish your film, let your partner sleep whilst getting that incredible audio straight to you. And I was like, that's a story that's going to resonate to our customers, because they would have been in that environment where their partner's fallen asleep and you want to finish the film, but you're just trying to turn it down enough. You maybe put your subtitles on so that you can still finish the movie. And that was a way that you took that information. I was like, the audience will understand it. So my biggest pain point is taking all of these black boxes and all these weird things that we make and distilling it down into a story that's going to resonate to the customer past you, where you can tell that story and they go, do you know what? Throw one of those in the bedroom because that happens to me and I need it. And that's the biggest pain point I have, is making sure we take those technical bits of information and distill them into storytelling.
Yeah, I love that you keep bringing up storytelling, because it shows you're a true marketer to understand, the value there. With our clients, same thing. I look at my estimating team, I look at my field team, and us operating in the business, you have terms and the way we speak about different products, and we understand it. We're in the building industry; these are common, and sometimes we'll make a comment, the client just kind of stares at us like we know they have no idea what they're paying for, what the product is, and so many times they may not want to ask the question. And so, to your point, it's really important that we become a good translator, and even more importantly, storyteller, because that's really what's going to make that connection.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. And the thing is, in our world, when we get to the top end of the clients we work with, people assume that, well, they've got all this money, they're doing this super yacht or this huge luxury project, so they don't mind spending all these line items. They just tick these off, don't they? And they say, yeah, fine, or one of those, one of these, put it in. Yours are great. The truth is, everything gets scrutinized and everything we do needs to add value. And they live in a world where their purchases, their products, the things they do in their spare time, every minute of their day is about value add. And therefore, we have to make sure that everything that we're putting on those projects and everything we're making does exactly that and adds value. And we can convince and talk people through that value, because they are the most demanding people I find on the planet, the people we work with.
Oh, it's amazing. Now, what about like just the R&D, right? The research and development behind Crestron. I would imagine it's quite the task, as you are in the technology space. It changes extremely fast. At the same point, I think I can only imagine your pain point being Crestron is that you are in the tech space, which advances so fast, and yet you're in the construction space, which moves like a dinosaur. So, us that were reluctant to integrate or understand new technology and understand how to even, you know, integrate into the home, and yet you are at the forefront of it. So walk us through, that connection.
I think it's important that we, to begin with, have a connection. It would be very easy for us to, as Crestron, say, well, look, we don't need to deal with the construction industry. We have dealers out there in the field. They're the pros. We teach them. They're the people who buy our product. Leave them to dealing with the construction teams, the designers, the architects. And that would be, that would be easy, and that would remove a lot of work we do. But instead, we've gone the opposite way, and we dedicate entire teams to working just with the likes of yourself. And I know you know a lot of our team who do that, and they are in this space to do exactly what you're talking about there. Educate, convince, support, come and visit you with clients, support your teams, train, elevate your expertise in what we do. And that's their sole job. When you know Joanne well, and you know her team, you've known Michelle Gus for years. These are teams who just focus on business development, and business development for us is through you and your teams and working with the industry, the construction industry. So we're dedicated to supporting. We'll come along and do training sessions. We'll meet with you and your clients. We'll bring you to our HQ. We'll do technology run-throughs. We'll look at your designs and check that things are right or what's missing. And it's a huge part of the business. So I think in reality, it's about having that connection and not leaving those stones unturned. And that's really, really important for us. And then the other side of it is, once we're working with you, it's not just about pushing information onto you. It's about, so what are your pain points? What are the issues you're having? Because to wind it back to research and development, there's no point in us making products that you don't need. So the other part of it is being out there in the field, working with the construction industry, working with the designers and the architects to understand, what are your pain points? What are the trends you're seeing? Where are you seeing your industry going? To help us take that and build relevant new products. And again, one of those that we created just for this purpose. And again, it's a small product for us, but a lot of our clients, when they're building homes, have areas in the house dedicated to throwing incredible parties. And with that comes sharing music. And a lot of times, again, this is on board super yachts as well. They'll have areas dedicated to the DJs coming on to be part of the party. And when you bring guests into the home, like guest DJs or artists, how do you bring the sound system that's going to elevate that environment on board or in these very, very high-end homes? It was very difficult. Most of the times, clients would have to bring their own equipment, their own audio and their own speakers, because you can't connect to the home's system. So we designed, again, an NAX product that has an XLR connection. And you just put that connection in the corner of the space where the DJ always goes. They can bring their equipment and they professionally plug the XLR in, and it's on the network. And then you've got the DJ or the artist's audio not just in that single room where the party's being thrown, but outside, in the living room, in the games room, and it distributes that audio throughout the home. So that small product, that small little device was built based on the requests that we were having from architects, designers, shipyards and builders who were saying, we always have people coming on board to deliver entertainment for parties, but we have no way to get their professional audio throughout the spaces. So we made the product, made it part of our NAX platform. So it's about the connection, it's about education, but it's about listening as well, and about taking in what you guys need and doing things with that to create incredible technology off the back of it.
There's something to be said. I think it's very insightful, when you say listening and understanding the customer's pain points, because the more you understand about the operation side, the construction side, the vertical side, right, of construction, right, the better your research team can now formulate kind of your tactics, to, be a great partner. And I think
Oh
about that
yeah,
as the builders. When I started my company, of course, I didn't know like how an architect operates or how a designer operates, and even furthermore, my suppliers and manufacturers. And I find that, as that education continues, right, and you understand the interior designer's business and the architect's business and how they operate this, I understand pain points from the customers. I've been, on these manufacturing tours, whether it's like Crestron or Kohler or Sub-Zero Wolf, and you really see that, sometimes we take it for granted that the product just shows up, like you're saying, Michael, shows up on my doorstep. Let's go put it in. But when you travel behind the scenes and you see that manufacturing at its heart and all the thought and process, I mean, there's just a level of respect and admiration and coordination that really changes your business philosophy. And it's just that I feel that that's been a key success to some of our growth as a business.
totally. And I think it's for you, you've got to pick the right partners to work with as well, because you've got tons of choice out there. And we're privileged that you choose to work with Crestron because you do have other options. So for us, if we just stand still and we're not seen to support you, or we're not seen to be there when you need us, or to show that we're going on the right path, you can walk away. There are other brands in the market, and that's not just in automation technology. You can pick and choose throughout your entire construction phase the solutions or products that you choose to put in your project. So, for us, it is about partnership. And, we know that you can choose other people, and that's always at the back of our mind. So we're innovating and creating product based around the fact that we want to have great partnership with our customers and our clients and everyone we work with. And it's little things. When we develop our platforms, we do always take into account the process you go through. So something we did recently, which was really vital to our dealer network, was we know that within the house build process, lighting is usually done first, right? You have to get in and do the lighting to get the code. Now, when you think of a Crestron system in the properties, a lot of the times to get a Crestron system up and running, you kind of have to do everything at the same time. So you'll find on projects that people were wheeling in the AV rack whilst doing the lighting, and then you're putting the lighting in, and you've got an AV rack already in the home because, well, I had to put that in. I had to configure that at the same time as lighting because I could then test and get the lights to work. But the problem with that is you've then got all this incredibly expensive equipment at the phase of a house that you don't really want all those things in the build at that point. So we started to think about that process, and we brought in a term that we use for Crestron Home, which is multi-processor support, which meant that you could literally do the configuration of the lighting first, get it done, get it working, get it sorted, and the codes passed, and you've done that. And then at a later time, bring in the AV and connect the two processors together. And it allows you to bring in the audio and video side of the project at a later time when it's right for you on the job, not when it's right for us because we want you to do it all in the same. So those little nuances where we break the system to go, actually, this works better for the construction industry, so let's do that. That's what we're doing continuously, finding those small nuggets for the professionals like yourself to make it easier for you to do the jobs, to make it better, faster, at the end of the day, cheaper for you to go in and make potentially less mistakes, because ultimately we want to make it easy for you. And that's what makes us a good partner. And that's where we're going to continue to move forward as a brand, is being an exceptional partner to people like yourself. And it's at the heart of what we do.
Yeah, it's just been amazing, Michael. And I want to be sensitive to your time because I know, if the time changes a little bit later for you back, in the motherland there in London, and you've been very gracious with your time with our audience today. And so, for those listening, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for fun, and then where the listeners could find you, or learn more about Crestron.
Yeah, sure. So from a Crestron standpoint, just head over to our website, crestron.com. You'll be able to explore the world of everything we do, both on the residential and commercial side. And then if you want to connect with me, feel free to drop me an email, michael.short@crestron.com, or find me on socials. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all under michael.short. So you'll be able to pick me up on there. In terms of what I do for fun, I'm a huge sports fan,
Yes,
but that for me is football, and not your football, my football.
the real football, the real
The
football.
real football. So I'm a huge Manchester United fan, and for those who don't know, we used to be a fantastic football team, and right now it's not so great for us. So we're going through some extreme turmoil in terms of performing. But outside of that, I do follow some American sports. We recently did a project with the New York Giants, so I've got into American football a little bit more, and I'm following that, which is really exciting. Otherwise, I spend most of my time eating and drinking. I love wine, I love food, and I try to travel the world and do as much of that as I can, whether it's through work or in my own time. So yeah, sports and travel, food and wine, and that's what I'm about.
It's amazing. I will say as we close this out, I'm a big, what we call soccer fan, football and Premier League, of course. And,
Yep.
recently I was in London, was able to go to my first Chelsea game. Not that I'm a huge Chelsea fan, but I just wanted to go. So I went to
It's great.
Chelsea, and it was incredible, the atmosphere and being there live. When they played, I think it was Arsenal. It's a really unique treat. And we've been, now that the Premier League's broadcast all the time, and Amazon, they've been doing, behind with Manchester City, and
Yeah.
it's been fun to see. And of course, we all know Manchester United. I mean, they've been a stellar operation for a long time. So sometimes you go in these cycles, but
Yeah, well, I'm glad you got to see a good game. Chelsea Arsenal's fantastic. It's a beautiful stadium in a beautiful part of London. But
yeah.
to flip that, my experience of American football, I've been to one game. I went to watch the Jets, and I think it was
I'm sorry.
well, this was the problem. I think it was the lowest scoring NFL game in history. I think genuinely it finished like 1-0, or it was something like one. I can't remember, but it was like the lowest scoring game like in existence. It was absolutely unbelievable. And I left, and I had a hangover by the time I finished, because I did the pre-game, or what do you call it in the
Yeah, the tailgate.
did tailgating, and I was like, this is the most amazing experience of my life. I was like, it was incredible. I was walking into the stadium. I'd had this amazing experience tailgating, and then it was like 1-0. And like, I was looking forward. So I think I need to go to another game and experience
Yeah.
a different team.
Yeah, we need to get you a better game than that matchup. But
Yeah,
Michael, again, thanks for the smile here as we close out, and appreciate the relationship and looking forward to connecting in the near future.
that was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate it.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.